Tomorrow, President Trump plans to give a speech in Florida, largely focused on Venezuela and the U.S. backing for its self-proclaimed president, Juan Guaido. But President Maduro is not showing signs of leaving and seems to continue to have the support of the military. So, how did the situation happen? What's the United States' role in Venezuela? And is there a connection between Venezuela policy and increasing opposition to the government in Haiti? For some perspective and analysis, we turn to Christopher Sabatini, an adjunct professor at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs and editor of Global Americans, a newsletter focused on Latin America and the Caribbean. We've had lots of conversations on this program about the kind of immediate crisis that Venezuela is going through, the lack of medicine and food on the shelves, right? The things that the people are suffering through. In the bigger picture, how did we get here?
A large part of it is actually politics. So what's happened over the last 20 years, and it's been 20 years that this government has been in power, first under Hugo Chavez and then Nicolas Maduro. They've slowly closed off all the avenues for political participation and political mediation. They packed the Supreme Court, they packed the Electoral Council, they've actually sort of banned opposition parties from running. And so what effectively happened was there was no real way for the opposition to, in an incredibly crisis-driven situation in which the popularity of the government has fallen, there's no way for the opposition to gain any traction. And so at one moment, the National Assembly, which is effectively the last democratically elected institution in the country, appointed its president, Juan Guaido, and then declared under the Constitution that the current de facto president, Nicolas Maduro, was illegitimate because he had won in a largely discredited election in May 2018. And therefore, under the Constitution, Juan Guaido was the president. So now you have the situation where you have two presidents. And effectively what happened was that provided a moment within the political system in Venezuela that allowed the international community to rally in defense of democracy and human rights and recognize Juan Guaido. And in the lead in all this largely has been the U.S. President Trump has called Juan Guaido twice. Vice President Pence has met with his delegate to the Washington, D.C. as ambassador. So the U.S. is really taking the lead, although it's important to recognize there are 60 other countries that are also backing Juan Guaido.
What are our vested interests in backing Guaido? I mean, there's obviously the humanitarian concern, but strategically, how important is Venezuela to the United States?
Well, first of all, normatively, it's important because within the hemisphere, there is a thing called the Inter-American Democratic Charter, in which all the signatories, all 34 states of the hemisphere, have agreed to protect and defend representative democracy and the checks and balances of democracy. And for the last 20 years, the Venezuelan government, the Chavista government, has thumbed its nose at this sort of normative structure. So first of all, there's that issue that it's out of step with the rest of the hemisphere. Second of all, there is really a strategic element to this. More than 3.3 million people, Venezuelans, have left Venezuela and are fleeing and taking with them oftentimes insecurity, poverty. They're really a drain on a lot of countries, although they're accepting them. And then last is the issue of China and Russia. What was a democracy and human rights issue confined mostly to Venezuela has now become a geopolitical issue because as the other 60 countries have lined up to support Guaido, other countries from, let's say, the other side have lined up in defense of Nicolas Maduro. So you have Syria, Iran, Russia, China, all now, and Turkey now backing Maduro. So this is really boiled down to a geostrategic issue that goes to the U.S. interests within the hemisphere, not just around human rights, but also sort of its own national interest.
So what happens in the next few days? I mean, the United States has been sending shipments of humanitarian aid that is sitting across the border in Colombia. Guaido says, we are going to figure out a way to get this in. Maduro technically doesn't have to let convoys of stuff come here, and he's got a military that can stop it.
Hari, no one really knows. I mean, added to this is the fact that Donald Trump has said numerous times, and a number of people within his cabinet have said that the military option is still on the table. So you have that hovering in the context of more than 30 interventions that have from the United States have ended. Many of them ended badly within the hemisphere. So you have the shadow of the U.S. legacy of the bad Uncle Sam intervention. Right now, you have the assistance on the Colombian-Venezuela border. U.S. Marines actually protecting it that have helped deliver it. It is basically a showdown right now, and we'll have to see who blinks first.
And finally, yesterday we had a conversation on the program about Haiti, and there's this sort of connection here between Venezuelan money and influence and what's happening in Haiti's political turmoil.
Yeah, so Venezuela built a coalition within the hemisphere, in large part to sort of thwart any sort of challenges to its legitimacy and its efforts to violate human rights by this basically an oil giveaway program called Petrocaribe. And there are a number of beneficiaries, and one of them was the Haitian government. Well, first of all, about a year ago, a report came out alleging that most of the money that came from that oil program has disappeared, including ties to the former president and ties to the current cabinet members. So this has ignited a series of protests for this clear example of malfeasance and corruption. But there's also some allegations that somehow Venezuela may be behind it in other ways, because Haiti has flipped, and it's one of those countries that is now recognizing Guaido and not recognizing Maduro. So there's also this element of who's behind these protests that have rocked Haiti now for over a week and have resulted in the deaths of, at last count, 7 people.
So their allegiance is going back and forth to two parties that are struggling inside Venezuela right now.
Exactly. And it plays out the ripple effects of what could have been only a domestic issue are streaming across the region and across the world.
All right, Christopher Sabatini from Columbia University, thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Harry.